Welcome to a weekly catch-up out and about with Trev. I really appreciate everyone that comes through having a look at the stuff I put up on my YouTube channel. Sometimes I'm not really sure whether it's exactly what people want to see or whether I've put it together, the way that is going to be entertaining, but I do my best. There's been quite a lot of people who come past and had a look at last week's episode all about the protest by the Public Housing Defence Network. And this was at the Mantra Hotel in Russel Street, and that went off great. And I think they certainly, at least tried to get their message across. We certainly need more public housing. It's also been interesting that another group, Defend and Extend Public Housing, who have run regular protests all last year and on the steps of Parliament House, that they're also trying to get the message across. They, like I say, they ran things all last year and regularly, and they've already fired up for this year, so they're off and running, so that's cool as well. Been to some other things. There's been lots going on in Melbourne. We had on, whether you call it Australia Day or whether you call it Invasion Day, on the 26th of January we had a day, and Melbourne certainly and other cities had different days.
A very respected Aboriginal man in this community, sadly by my family. He did a lot of work. He was a Black Panther in the 70s and kept the fight for what's wrong. And he's certainly one of my biggest mentors, Gary Foley.
Wow, look at this. Look at this. This takes me back a long way. This is, I think you've certainly outdone last year. This is a great turnout, and I congratulate those who organised this. I haven't seen a crowd like this since the 1970s, in the heyday of the Aboriginal political movement. And speaking of the heyday of the Aboriginal political movement, on a day like this, it's probably important to remember some of the history of the resistance on this day that goes way back. As a professor of history, I don't like pulling rank on your face, but my thing is history. I spent the first part of my life, like some of the young people here today, making history. Halfway through my life, I realised that white academic historians were distorting and presenting a false representation of the history that I had been part of. That's why very late in life, I was almost 50 years old when I went to the University of Melbourne and studied history. I studied history at the University of Melbourne because that's where I considered some of the worst of the academic historians who were distorting our history. One of my mentors during that period of my life of studying spoke here earlier today. He's probably out there somewhere. Good on you, Tony Birch. But one of the reasons I studied history was to, like I said, start to present a more accurate representation of the history that I had been part of. And in the process of doing that, I came to understand much more about some of the history that had preceded me. In the late 1960s, early 1970s, with the great black uprising that started in Redfern and in Fitzroy, that led to the great renaissance, if you like, in the Aboriginal political resistance. Our heroes at that point in time were those who had gone before. The Jack Pattons, the Bill Arnesses, the Marge Tuckers, who had been responsible for the 1938 Day of Mourning, when William Cooper established once and for all that Aboriginal people considered this day to be a day of mourning and Invasion Day.
I must say, where I now sit in relation to the 26th of January is, it's a fairly abrasive day for many in the community. I mean, we have to remember that when Cook landed in 1788, that, he was part of a military force. They were part of the fearsome English empire that was expanding through its military muscle. That's how you spread empires. You don't do it by passive, just walking forward saying, if you don't mind, we're going to just camp here and we're going to move forward. That doesn't work. So throughout history, it's been the military that have pushed the boundaries. We have to remember that on day one, Cook's men would have been shooting. So I think the 26th of January, it's a dark day for the Indigenous population and many in community. And we probably need to start thinking about whether or not we want to celebrate that day. There's been calls already for we could change it to January 1, which is when we sign Federation. That's got issues attached because that messes up New Year's Day. But I think maybe we could move it to somewhere else. I don't think people are necessarily saying we shouldn't have a day to celebrate Australia. That's great. We can wave the flags and all those sorts of things. But whether it needs to be January 26th is probably the big question. And I think when you look at it objectively and you understand just how much pain and what went on back then, I think it's probably something we could step away from. Been doing some other stuff. Been doing lots of bike riding. You can't really see it, but I am starting to lose a few kilos. I'm working on that, and I've got to say, some of the bike trails in Melbourne are just spectacular. We've got the brand new trail down St George's Road, which is it's like the Hume Highway. It is amazing. But there's been some other tracks. I went down the Upfield Shared Path recently, and that takes you right down through Fawkner Cemetery and takes you right up, Fawkner train station right there. So if you're looking for a bike trail that's right next to a train station, that's about as close as you can get. It's 3 or 4 metres. It is right there. So they obviously put these bike trails in places where people can find them accessible. One of the weird things I found, or exciting things I saw, was I was somewhere down, I don't know exactly where I was, to be honest. But I noticed there was a bus running around. I took this photo of a bus with a bike rack on the front, and many people in the biking fraternity have been pushing for, at least to look at putting bike racks on the front of buses. Buses go all over the place, and they go to places where bike riders may want to go to and ride from, or they might end up places that are difficult to get back. So I think putting bike racks on the front of buses offers some really interesting routes that people will be able to bike ride. Melbourne's pretty big. I'm doing some fairly big Ks just riding from home. I went up to the Western Ring Road. Anyone that drives the Western Ring Road, got to tell you, on the other side of the big soundproofing fence is an awesome bike trail. So I rode along that, ended up on Sydney Road, come down, and that's how I got onto the Upfield Share Path. I rode all the way into the city, and I'd done 30k, something like that. So Melbourne's fairly big. You start doing these Ks. That's why I think things like the racks on the front of buses are important. You can ride 20, 30 Ks or whatever, end up in a spot. If you can get a bus back, then that makes it all possible. We've seen what happened when Lynn Koski back years ago tried to ban bikes off the trains, and that didn't last very long. I find it great because I can ride into the city, get a train back near to home, and then just ride home. Works. Sometimes I'm riding home at night. The other night I rode home, it was like 11 o'clock at night. So the public transport's got to be adapted to what works for us. At the end of the day, it's public transport, so it should meet the public's requirements and expectations. In regard to the bike racks, it turns out that the bus company have been running a bit of a trial. That's been running since early 2016, and I've contacted them, and I'm going to try and have a chat to them and see if we can't put together something in the future, because I'd love to find out where their trial program's gone in the last couple of years and how they feel about it and what problems that they've had, because I'm sure there's been a few. The bus I saw seemed to have space for 2 bikes. It had 2 bikes on it on the day. So I just wonder what happens. I suppose if you're waiting for your bike, you got to wait for the next bus. It'd be interesting to know what the experience is overseas, because I know in Europe they're using it a lot. So it'd be interesting. But anyway, at least they're trying, so that's cool. I still also think that in terms of the trains, it would be great if we had one carriage, maybe the back carriage. Like, they like to put the disabled people up the front near the driver, so they can, people in wheelchairs and that, they like to put them up the front so that they can get the attention of the driver, and the driver can come out quickly and just put the ramp up and things like that. So that's up the front. Why not the back carriage? Why couldn't you make that for bikes? Take out some of the seating, put some racks in, have some seating so that people can keep an eye on their bikes. I'm not saying that other people couldn't sit there, but why couldn't we do that? I mean, there are thousands and thousands of people wanting to ride bikes that want to use the come back or travel on the trains. Maybe we should trial it and just see if it works. Just an idea. Anyway, as I said, I've been doing lots of bike riding. I'm trying to get fitter. I've got an awesome snow trip planned, which I've got all the plans for it over on my whiteboard. Alright, so this is where I do all my planning for my upcoming snow trip, and a lot of people might look at this and say, look, you know, Mount Feathertop, Mount Hotham, it's hardly the Alps or the Himalayas or whatever. But nevertheless, I'll be going into a hostile environment. I'm hoping to have probably at least a metre of snow. The more snow, the safer it is. That's just a thing, because the more snow you've got more you can dig into the snow, you can build a snow cave easier, you can actually make blocks to make an igloo easier. So the more snow they get, so about a metre is what I've actually got it listed as my trigger, so I don't want to go until they've got a metre, so hopefully they'll get that. Luckily over there they normally have heaps and heaps of snow, so it's not much of a problem. I'm also been, you know, I've got to make sure I'm nice and fit for this, because this is going to be a thing. I was a bit overweight. I don't mind saying that. Start of January. we'll try again. Start of January, so the start of the year. There we go. I was 95 kilos and probably a little bit heavier than I should be. So I've embarked on a bit of a get fitter, lose a bit of weight program. Last month I did nearly 151 kilometres on the bike. I'm only on a mountain bike, so not a road bike, so I thought that was pretty cool. And 2nd of February, I weighed myself again, and I dropped 3 kilos to 92, and we'll see where I am at the 1st of March, and hopefully I can keep dropping just a couple of kilos, 2 or 3 kilos every month, and I'll get down to my target of 80 kilos by the time I'm heading away on this trip, which would be, I think that'd be a nice place to end up. So that's what I'm aiming for. I'm not really changing anything much in terms of what I eat. I'm fairly fussy with what I eat. I eat what I eat, and that's just the way it is. But I am playing around with quantities and things like that. So I'm just trying to be a bit smarter with it, and it seems to be starting to work. So we'll see if I get there. I got a pretty good understanding of how my body works and what I need to do. I know how I can push it. I pushed it recently on a ride. I did a bike ride. I did 40 Ks in the day, and I pushed it, and it was good. I mean, I'm 48, so I'm doing pretty good. This, in terms of planning for this thing, and any hike or any trip that I plan, first of all, I've got 5 main sections that I'm looking at. So I'm looking at planning. So where am I going hiking? Where can I start? Where can I finish? That's a bit trickier because I don't own a vehicle. So I've got to look at where I can get to and where I can get picked up via public transport. This trip works because I can get a bus I can get dropped off on the side of the road at Mount Hotham, and then I can get picked up in Harriettville a week later. So that's cool. Obviously in preparation is fitness, as I'm getting fitter, and I am getting fitter. Like, it's crazy. Like, the first 2 or 3 times I went out on the bike in January, like, it took it out of me. It hurt. It was something, something else. So the last few rides I've done, I've actually felt good on them, and been able to push, and got the legs powering along and things like that. Get the heart rate up, and we'll see how it all goes. I'm planning on doing 150 kilos basically for each month. but it depends. If it gets wet, starts to get wet, I hate riding in the rain. I might drop my amount, but I'll do them faster. So we'll see how that works. So in terms of equipment, got a few things. I've got most of the equipment I need. So I've got ice axe, snow shovel, crampons, thermals, snowshoes, things like that. I am looking to buy a new tent. My old tent, I've had it since 2001. And here's a shot of it on Mount Loch. This is the very first hike I ever, first hit out I ever took it on. We wanted to make sure it would work in snow, and this certainly tested it. And since then, it's been on countless trips to Mount Feathertop, the Fainters, Mount Bogong, Kosciuszko. It's been out in the desert. It's been set up in lots and lots of places. So I've certainly got my money's worth. I've got to admit, if I could buy another one of it, I would. The company was based in Germany. They don't make that model anymore. I spent the last 2 or 3 years more trying. I would love to just buy a replacement. I mean, really all I need is a fly for it. But anyway, so I've got to buy a new tent. It's going to cost me $700, by the way. These things aren't cheap, which comes in the budget, so should be able to afford to do this. Got some emergency considerations. So if I was going on a normal hike now, I'd have to look at where there's bushfires or total fire bans. Obviously, when I'm planning on doing it in winter, we shouldn't have any total fire bans. That would be twilight zone stuff. But I do have to look at, there could be severe storms. There could be, you can end up with more snow than you can handle. I've camped on the back of Mount Bogong and had 0.5 metre fall in 6 hours, and that pushed the tent around a bit and made it interesting the next day walking on all that fresh powder snow. So that's an issue. My most recent trip was 2015. My most recent snow trip was 2015, and I loved it. That was really just a hit out to see if I still wanted to go snow camping, because it is different. Now, I hope to have some good photos, and I also plan, when I get my new tent, I'll show you the new tent and how it works and why it's better than the old one. It's going to weigh less, cost more, be able to be set up better, because the big change with my new tent is that you set the fly up first with the poles, and then you put the tent underneath. So when it's pouring rain, you set your fly up and you can hop underneath out of the rain while you set your tent up. My current one, you've got to set the tent up while it's raining and then quickly get the fly over it. So I've had a couple of times when I've set it up in the pouring rain, and it's been tricky. So that's my plans, and that's where I'm at. That's where I am in terms of my weight loss. I've got to drop a few kilos. I'm aiming for 80. We'll see if we get there. Anyway, guys, that's about it. Cheers.